It provides a cultural opportunity for students as well as the community to explore the rich heritage of St. Bernard and the New Orleans area. I'd like to welcome everybody to this Nunez History Lecture Series. It's a great crowd out there. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. We can really tell who the die-hard veterans are of the History Lecture Series to make it through the rain and everything tonight to come here. I'm Curtis Manning with Nunez Community College, and it's great to see everybody. As I have some very bad news to give you. As I guess all of you know that the mascot will not be here today. She had another engagement that she got paid more for, and so something better to do. So she's moving up in the world using the Nunez History Lecture Series as a springboard. But she'll be back next time for sure. But she wanted me to extend her greetings and everything. But to make up for that, we have a very special lecture tonight. It's going to feature Ms. Doris Voitier, the superintendent of the St. Bernard Parish Schools. Ms. Voitier was with the school system for about 33 years when she became the superintendent in 2004. Just a year later, she might have had one of those be careful what I wish for things when the hurricane hit, but with great sacrifice and exemplary service, got us through, St. Bernard Parish, through the hurricane and the aftermath, and the school system has become one of the shining examples of what we can do to rebuild. So we'll get right on to the program, and I'd like to introduce Ms. Voitier.
Thank you very much, Curtis, and thank all of you for being here this evening. I know what a sacrifice it must have been coming out in the inclement weather, and I do know a lot of us would rather be over at Chalmette High School, at one of our schools tonight, because we're involved in the volleyball playoffs. So our girls are in the first round. Hopefully they'll win tonight and progress on to the Pontchartrain Center later this week for the next round of the state playoffs. But as Curtis mentioned, I've been with the school system now 35 years, and when I was appointed the superintendent back in August of 2004, I thought I was in a situation that we could begin to focus primarily on curriculum again, and that was going to be our major emphasis for the next few years. We had been through a massive rebuilding program where we had built 4 new schools and gone into all of our existing facilities, had done a complete renovation where we had state-of-the-art technology. We had passed a $30 million bond issue and had done this in St. Bernard Parish. And lo and behold, within a month of being appointed superintendent, we had our first scare back in the fall of 2004 with Hurricane Ivan. Very fortunate that it bypassed us. And then, of course, last year we were not quite as fortunate with Hurricane Katrina. And we've learned a great deal in this past 14 months about us as a school system and about us as a community. And if anything positive has come out of this, I think it has brought many of us closer together with a renewed purpose and a single purpose to rebuild our school system. And as such, then, to be a spur for the revitalization and the rebuilding of our community. Now, you know, when you go to college and you begin preparing to become an educator, and in my case, going through the ranks and then finally becoming superintendent, at first you say there's absolutely nothing that prepared me for the challenge that we've faced over the past 14 months. I mean, there's no college course that you take, College 101, in reconstruction of a school system from scratch when the entire infrastructure has been demolished and there is no local tax base and the state finances are in a similar situation. But I think over the course of the past 35 years, I've had a great many positive experiences in the school system and in the community that has helped to prepare me, I guess, for what has happened over the past 14 months. But most importantly, that we have formed relationships among the people within the school system, that we had an extremely loyal base of employees that banded together to make this happen. So it has definitely been a community effort to get us back up and running. So what I thought I would do tonight is to start off, we shortened a video that we had made telling our story over the past year. Some of what happened to us during the storm and immediately thereafter. So I'd like to spend the first 15 to 20 minutes showing you a little bit about our struggles over the past year, and then follow it with our rebuilding plan to give you some insight of where we feel we're headed within the next year, the next 2 years, the next 5 years, and hopefully into the completion of the renovation of the system. So with that, if y'all would start the video, please.
You do have to see it to believe it. Everything's just dead and gone.
They had water coming in from everywhere. The wind was blowing at least 160.
You just want to go back home so bad, and you can't. My mom finally called one night and said that everything was gone.
In the course of 24 hours, our lives changed dramatically.
And we thought that our house was going to be like a fishbowl, that it was just going to fill up, and there was no way that it could get out.
It can happen to anyone. It's a reality.
Prior to Hurricane Katrina, we were a school system of 14 schools, elementary, middle, and high, and a preschool center. So a total of 15 school sites where we served 8,800 students.
On the Friday before Katrina, Chalmette High sponsored its 43rd football jamboree. It was a very busy day getting ready for the first ball game of the year.
We were all sitting in our stadium, which we love, and we knew that there was a hurricane in the Gulf, but it had not put us in its crosshairs yet, so we just assumed it was going to go to Florida, like the forecasters had predicted.
As it approached Saturday, I had all of our principals come in, check their buildings, make sure everything was locked down, had our maintenance crew come in. Our IT person backed up our student database, our financial database, and as usual, we gathered all of the food that we had in every one of our cafeterias and brought them and centralized them here at Chalmette High School.
We put a few food and water supplies upstairs. As the people came in, they were representative of the past shelter evacuees. Married couples, extended families with children, older people with no families, people who had relatives but were left behind, the sick and the disabled, people who had no means or no transportation to go anywhere else.
So the storm raged Sunday night. We stood there and watched the roof of the elementary school across the street being blown off. The electricity went out, of course, and we had a generator that we thought we could start, and in the midst of the storm, several of the men went out, tried to get it started, and couldn't. So it didn't work. So we had no electricity as the storm raged all Sunday night and into early Monday morning. The windows burst in the school, some of the rain came in, but we rode that out pretty well.
Mid-morning, the firemen received a report that water was rising in Araby, the community adjacent to Chalmette.
But we had evacuees, some of whom were very infirm, on the first floor here. So our main priority at that point was to get the evacuees upstairs and make them safe. We had to get the people safe.
So as we were doing that and looked up, down the main thoroughfare that the school sits on, there was a wall of water just coming down the thoroughfare.
The water appeared on the outside of the school windows, coming up a foot or two. And then all of a sudden, the water was 5.5 feet high inside the school. It came within 15 minutes. It was a mixture of marsh-bottom mud, oil and gasoline, fish and grass. It came with a strong current and invaded every ground floor room.
And you could see it come in across the football field, and I was watching it over the infield and the end zones, and then it came in over the 10-yard line, the 20-yard line, and it was the 50-yard line. And then you could tell the depth of it because it began to rise toward the first level of our stadium, which is an elevated stadium, and you realize the depth of it and the breadth of it was just incredible, and the speed of it.
We sat here, I guess, that Monday afternoon as the water rose to the rooftops of one-story buildings. We began to hear people cry for help because they were trapped. We were on the second floor now of the school, completely surrounded by water. So if you looked out, all you could see was a lake. We were under about 8 feet of water. The boats then began to rescue people, and these were not boats sent in by a state or federal government. These were boats manned by the people who lived in St. Bernard Parish. And as they rescued our people, they were bringing them to us.
The boats docked at the end of walkways. The people walked on top of the walkway coverings to the windows in our stairwell. We still have a yellow chair where the people climbed in the windows.
So by Monday evening, our numbers swelled to almost 1,500 people.
There was little communication. Cell phones worked only late at night if we went up to the roof, and then only for seconds. In a world where video phones showed TV pictures from Afghanistan, we couldn't talk to our government leaders a mile away.
It looked pretty bleak at times, and we kept, I guess at that point we didn't realize the massiveness of the event. Because we had no communication whatsoever, we didn't realize that not only were we underwater, but major portions of New Orleans was as well. And we didn't realize, and we couldn't understand why no one was coming to help us.
2 men came in who needed dialysis. One, Tom, had a special peritoneal type of dialysis that he needed. He came in wet and he shivered even though the late August temperature was stifling. He needed treatment. Each day he would tell us the number of days he had left. I hope he made it. Many others needed oxygen. One gentleman told us that he had 24 hours of oxygen left, then came back and told us that he had made a mistake. He only had 2 hours remaining. There we were in the middle of an 8-foot toxic lake in a totally devastated community, needing oxygen tanks to save lives.
One of our state senators, Walter Basso, came up in a boat to our second floor building and asked our superintendent, Ms. Voitier, what we needed. We needed oxygen tanks, we needed more gasoline to run the generators, and we needed food and water. We had no idea how long we would be here without food and water.
As people kept arriving at our school, they were bringing whatever possessions they could take with them in a boat, and they were bringing them their animals as well. So in this shelter, or in the school, we had dogs, cats, birds, people who had no dry clothes, and no bathroom facilities that worked.
We worked very hard to get the infirm people out as soon as we could, and then that Wednesday we were finally, the water had gone down enough in one part of the campus where we could get the people out toward our stadium and walking toward what we called St. Bernard Highway, which is drier, get them out. They were able to walk to the ferry.
About 5 days later, the first people who set foot in our community were Canadian Search and Rescue Unit, and they came to us before anyone from our state or federal government arrived.
My school group of 23 people had another problem. We had 23 pets with us. Because we knew that the authorities would not let us leave with our pets, we had arranged to leave on a tugboat. The river was only half a mile away. Everything was in place when the Coast Guard stopped our boat captain from coming to our rescue. We had to do some quick rearranging. On Friday at 11 a.m., we left the school on a hot wired and changed battery school bus and van. And after much haggling about the animals, we weren't going to leave without our animals. We got on 3 different boats, another school bus, and several pickup trucks. We were taken through New Orleans on the expressway. We saw the out-of-control gas fires shooting up in the air. We passed people walking in the opposite direction, going nowhere. Even though we were told at various times that we were going to Bayou Lacombe, Bayou La Loutre, Madison, Mississippi, Dallas, and other places, we finished our exodus in Gonzales 13 hours later, thanks to a church group and the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries.
Used to have like a little stuffed teddy bear to sleep with. I forgot it. I saw it in the middle of my room with the bear ripped head into pieces.
My house didn't fare too well. It wound up in my neighbor's yard. And 3 houses that don't belong to us belonged on my lot now, along with the car, so. We did have water. We lost everything we had. We had 8 feet of water in our house.
I couldn't stay in the house for long. I had to come out because I just started crying my eyes out, just actually witnessing that everything was gone and knowing that you can never go back to your house again.
What I miss most would have to be my old school, actually.
I was a senior there, proudest year, had my own senior staircase, everything else. And I was there for 2 weeks and it was gone.
This place is gone. And we had to go through that initial shock of almost a sense of hopelessness and despair, to kind of standing up, dusting ourselves off, and saying, no, okay, we have two choices. We either let St. Bernard die, or we become part of bringing it back. And we chose to be part of bringing it back.
And I made the pledge to the people in this community that the first child who arrived back, I would provide educational services.
A month after the storm, I was called to Baton Rouge to get back to work. Our superintendent, Doris Voitier, was trying to get through the FEMA maze. At first, she was told that we could get 2 modular schools built by the Corps of Engineers by January 15th. After 2 weeks of planning, the story changed.
And so there became a big FEMA turf war over who really came to our rescue. And what resulted is practically nobody was coming to our rescue. And we went through, I think, 8 or 10 or 15, I've forgotten at this point, FEMA project directors. That's the person who comes in and sits with you and makes all your hopes and dreams come true. And they were changing on us weekly. And we would say, well, FEMA Bob told us this, and oh, that's not correct, because FEMA Jim would say something different. And then we would say, well, FEMA Jim said, and FEMA Tim would say, oh no, that's not correct. And so every week or every 2 weeks or so, as our FEMA project directors changed, the stories changed, the guidelines changed.
So we looked at them and said, thank you very much, but we'll do it ourselves.
She took it upon herself to go out and contract with a private company without any money coming in to build a trailer school and attach it to the 2nd floor of Chalmette High School.
And it's really strange that we could find portable buildings in North Carolina and Georgia that were immediately available, and nobody else could seem to do that.
And in 3.5 weeks, we set up 18 classrooms in the parking lot of Chalmette High School. They were pioneers, and that they were here to help us rebuild the school system and thus rebuild our community. And that they had weathered this storm. It would make them stronger and us stronger, and no one was putting us out of St. Bernard Parish, and we would rebuild.
It's an interesting, kind of exhilarating experience in a way, because we're putting together what we're putting together, and we're trying to rise from something from the ashes here.
I guess it was kind of a joke for a while that we could get a school system up and running in less time than it takes our federal government to open a post office. We knew that we had to provide some form of breakfast and some form of lunch, because all of our children now, the majority of them would be living in either trailers or in tents on concrete slabs. And the FEMA people told me, well, you know, why don't you just feed them sandwiches or the MREs, those meals ready to eat, which we all ate a lot of at that time. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to feed them a hot meal, and we'll feed them a hot meal from the very first day, because that's probably going to be the only hot meal that they'll get all day. This young boy, I guess about 8 or 9 years old, walked into the tent and saw the food, and he opened it and he said, oh my God, real food. So that child, that was the first time he had had what he thought of as real food since the hurricane. We knew we had to refurbish one of our schools, so I got a contractor who was skilled in doing quick turnarounds. They'd done a lot of work in the Carolinas after Hurricane Hugo. We contracted with them, and I gave them a deadline. They began the first week in December, and I gave them a deadline of January 18th to have a new roof on this school building, a working cafeteria, and the use of all of the classrooms in the main building. And they came through with it. And as the community grows, we've got to keep a step ahead of them and making sure that the educational facilities are going to be ready for them.
The outpouring of support and the donations that have come in to the school system have been unbelievable.
At Christmas, the people of South Florida donated 660 bicycles, one for each student enrolled. The Miro Foundation gave every student either a $300 iPod or a portable DVD player, depending on the age of the child.
It's just been heartening that people are so willing to help us in terms of money, in terms of manpower, and in terms of supplies, all going to help the kids.
The community of Central Louisiana donated its profits from this year's fair, $190,000.
And we have made some lifelong friends, and we have made the commitment that 2 years from now, when they do their next fundraiser to help a community in need, we're going to be there helping them raise money. Bought buses, school buses, with their donation. And pretty soon you'll be seeing buses on the street that have on the side of them donated by the spirit of the city of Central.
They often leave saying that we'll be back, and some have come back to help us. Some have come from as far away as Oregon, you know, the Latin school in Chicago, they have come down. We've had people from the University of Michigan. You know, it's been extremely rewarding. People from New York have been down to see us and have tried to help us. Boston, you know, in many, many ways, want to be here to be part of a hands-on bringing back this community in this school. Our First Lady has been to visit us twice, along with Margaret Spellings, and we've had our local senator, you know, Mary Landrieu, has come down and brought some very important congressmen down to see, and some senators to see what's happened to us. They really don't believe it until they get here as to the dimension of the disaster, of the devastation. On TV, you just get a one-dimensional look at it, so to speak. But when you walk in it, when you smell it, when you experience it and the wind is blowing and the dust is blowing around, and you can really appreciate the level of the devastation and how it has so impacted every house, every street, every church, every business, everything here has been impacted by that storm.
The schools are back, and they've been back, and the leadership is phenomenal.
I think the highlight of this year for everybody was the graduation ceremony at the New Orleans Arena.
And each school was able to recognize its honor graduates, recognize its award winners in some way, shape, or form, so that they were able to represent their school, that even though they had not been there in that building for the year, they were still there together in spirit. And it was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony for all the kids to be together and appreciate what each school had brought to the district during its tenure as a school in our parish. It was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony for the kids.
You can see in them that they have learned to value relationships and time spent together, which pre-Katrina probably would not have been an issue for them because they were always immediately there. These kids have grown up. They have definitely grown up. We did it. We did it on our own. Just do not think for a second that we did not do it on our own. The people who are the employees of the St. Bernard Parish Public Schools made this happen.
Everybody was saying that too, like, why do we want to go back? But it's home. It's like you grew up here. Everything you knew was here.
And I think the tribute to the people in this parish, they want to come home. I think every time I see that, it just, I don't know, it brings tears to me, and I think to a lot of people within our school system and our community. But I think everyone has had quite an experience over the past 14 months in whatever area of the parish they've been working, whether it's the school system, parish government, the firefighters, the sheriff's deputies, and our citizens themselves. So we all need to look forward to where we are going now. We have put together, our school board members and our school board administration has gotten together to formulate a rebuilding plan as best we can with the information we have. And what I'd like to just briefly go over with you this evening is what we foresee will be happening over the next couple of years. Prior to, well, technology is great until, why don't you advance it for me, please? All right, prior to the storm, just very briefly, we were a school system with 8,800 students, grades pre-K through 12, and our test scores were at or above the state and national averages in all forms of standardized testing. We were financially stable. We practiced fiscal conservatism, so we were very healthy. We had never had in the past 15 years, for those of you who are in the accounting profession or follow that, we had never had an audit exception, not a question cost, and not even a management letter with suggestions for improvement over internal controls. And we had won our awards for financial reporting and fiscal integrity over the past 15 years. We had a universal 4-year-old program where we combined Head Start funds, Louisiana 4 funds, the tobacco settlement monies, and we had concentrated them in developing our 4-year-old program, and any child who didn't fit within those economic guidelines to qualify for those programs, we put in district money so that every 4-year-old in St. Bernard Parish would come to school tuition free to get a good head start on their educational programs. And because we were able to centralize those funds for the first time prior to the storm, we had switched some of our Head Start funding into an early Head Start program where we were beginning to serve 3-year-olds from our highest poverty areas. And that's why after the storm, we're able to educate 3-year-olds last year and this year. And I'm not sure if that's going to be able to continue, but because all of our children were deemed to be homeless over the past 2 years, all of the 3-year-olds within our parish qualified for that early Head Start program. We were the first school district in the state of Louisiana to have all of our schools accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. And that is a distinction of which we are very proud. And we had scheduled in October of 2005, we were scheduled to undergo a prestigious process called district-wide accreditation. And that was reserved for those school districts in the United States where every school was accredited, and a team of educators nationwide would come in and take a look at your program, take a look at your standards, and put that label on us. Hopefully we were able to achieve that. Well, we had to postpone that, obviously, because in last October, we weren't in operation. But what we have done is reschedule that visit for this coming spring. So this March, we will be hosting a team of national educators to come down because we think we're ready. We have come in and we have redone our strategic plan. We've got our programs in place. So we feel we're ready to undergo that process. And I feel that it's very important that we get back to some sense of normalcy to show people that curriculum is still an emphasis in our school system and we are meeting those national standards. So we are going to be hosting that team in early March. As I had mentioned before, we had passed a bond issue where we had built 4 new schools and completely renovated the other facilities where we had state-of-the-art technology with 5 computers in every classroom and all of our schools wired, and we had whole class computer labs as well. And we provided programs for all students, the academic and musically gifted, our college-bound students, regular education, and our special needs students. As you saw on the slide, post-Katrina, in November 14th, 11 weeks after the storm, when we opened on that first day, we had 334 students. 30 days later, the day before the Christmas holidays, we had just about doubled to 640. When we came back after Christmas in February, our count was 1,700, and we ended the year in May with 2,360 students. Now just think what that means if you're a teacher in a classroom. In 7 months, we multiplied 7 times in student enrollment last year. And our children came back to us with myriad educational experiences. Some had been to 2, 3, 4, 5 different schools in the interim. Some had been to none. You might have been a teacher of a 2nd grade that started out with 20 children in November. Then 2 days later, you added 1. 3 days later, 2 more came in your class. After Christmas, maybe 5 more. And the numbers swelled. We split the classes. You started over. And then the numbers kept growing and we had no space, so we may have gotten up to 40 children in a class where we put 2 teachers in and space was at a premium. So it was an extremely difficult situation, not only for the children, but primarily for our teachers last year, because they were dealing, as were all of us, with their own personal issues in their personal homes, as well as dealing professionally with the children and the educational concerns. And one thing that you didn't see in the video was not only did we buy those classroom trailers to start the school, we had no place to house our teachers or our staff, so we had to go out and purchase travel trailers for our teachers and staff to live in, and we've centralized those at 4 different locations. So we've got housing issues as well as educational issues that we've been dealing with over the past 14 months. We had 14 uninhabitable school sites. At least 5 of our schools are slated for demolition, which means that FEMA has assessed them to be over 50% damage, meaning the cost of repairing them is over 50% of the cost of replacement. So there are many of our schools that we cannot renovate that we will eventually have to tear down and rebuild either in the same place at different elevations or moving them and centralizing them in other locations. But we're still meeting the academic, physical, and emotional needs of all of our children as the year progressed. Now, our plan for rebuilding, when we got together, we focused in on 4 areas. We were looking at reconstruction. Then we were looking at new ideas and new facilities. How could we centralize services a little better, maybe to serve a diminished student population, and possibly to serve them in different areas. We were also looking at our college connection here with Nunez to see how we could maximize and coordinate those efforts a little bit better. And we were also very, very concerned, very cognizant of our commitment to the community and how we would fit into the overall rebuilding structure. So tentatively, this is basically our rebuilding plan. In November of 2005, last November 14th, we opened the St. Bernard Unified School at the Chalmette High School site in the parking lot there. The reason that we chose that facility, there were many, many reasons. Chalmette High School was at a very strong building. It was close to where we could get utilities the quickest. We could get the electrical hooked up. We were right near the water plant where we could get the water. That was going to be the first area where we would have the potable water. We could hook up into the storage system. So the utilities played a part, the sturdiness of the building played a part, plus the facilities that we had there in terms of the fields where the children could play, the football field, the baseball field, which we had the younger children playing in those and using as playgrounds. So it was a logical choice to open the unified school there. And we had representation of students from over 25 different schools, all 15 of our public school sites and every private and parochial school in this parish, as well as children who lived in this parish, some of whom had attended schools, private schools in the New Orleans area, came to us last November for their education. So we had over 25 schools represented, and we had to mesh those student bodies together. In April, this past April or May, knowing that we needed to expand the facilities and getting a little bit more breathing room, we solicited bids for the rebuilding of Andrew Jackson. So our initial plan was to go to Andrew Jackson next, and then really St. Bernard High School third. And we did that in the initial planning because those were our largest facilities that we could accommodate the most or the largest number of children and maximize the resources that we had, because we had limited financial resources and we wanted to be able, we couldn't open 5 or 6 different schools at one time, but we were trying to open our larger schools, the schools that were better built and could accommodate more students. So we began with Andrew Jackson. We got the bid package together, and in fact, the architect who put it together, Mike Lakeen and his firm, actually he's sitting out here in the audience tonight, which was a pleasant surprise to see him. But he quickly got the bid package together. We bid that out, and in 72 days, we renovated Andrew Jackson. The contractors worked 24 hours a day. They worked day and night to get Andrew Jackson ready. And we went right to the wire, and we were able to open it this August. And we currently have 1,870 kids from the age of 3 through the 6th grade at the Andrew Jackson site. So it was a monumental undertaking that we were able to do. Grades 7 through 12 are housed at Chalmette High School, and we've got about 1,700 students at that site. So we're well over 3,500, approaching 3,600 students at those 2 sites. So we knew it was imperative to quickly follow it with as many schools as we could financially open at this time, and that we could actually construct. And you know how it goes with your normal house construction. You don't just snap your fingers and have your home renovated. Well, just think of a school building, which is a lot larger than a home and a lot more complex. But these contractors are working tirelessly to get these buildings operational for us. So what we had planned to do was, right after we got Andrew Jackson on the drawing board and out with the specs, to follow it with the specs for St. Bernard High. And when we went down to take a look at St. Bernard High with the FEMA inspectors and our own architects, we found that there was a possibility of some structural problems at St. Bernard High. The bricks were separating from the sheathing. And I don't know the technical terms for this, but what the concern was is the building was structurally unsound, especially in the gym area. So we quickly had to make an adjustment and decide, instead of going to St. Bernard High as our 3rd school, was to move that to Trist Middle School as the 3rd school that we would open. And we're dealing with the St. Bernard High issues, and we're hoping to get that bid package out within the next few months. So we will be looking at that facility but we could not get that up in a short period of time. So right after we put out the bids for Andrew Jackson, we came right out in July to solicit bids for the rebuilding of Trist. Then we opened Chalmette for grades 7 through 12 in August, and Andrew Jackson for children age 3 through the 6th grade. This January, we're hoping to have Trist ready, and by all indications, we will. Now, the only way that we intend to move children to the Trist facility at the middle of the school year is if we have such a space problem at Chalmette and Andrew Jackson that it forces us to do so, because we don't feel it's educationally sound to move children in the middle of the year. A lot of these kids, especially the 7th and 8th graders, because that's the population we would eventually move to Trist, would be our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. The 7th and 8th graders have assimilated into the high school setting over at Chalmette High. Some of them are in the band, some of them are playing athletics, they're in the clubs and organizations. And to uproot those children for the last 3 or 4 months of school is not a good practice unless we absolutely have to. So we may move an alternative program over to Trist for those children who are having difficulty in the regular setting, a school that we had called Nova prior to the storm. We may move those children over to Trist to end the school year, but keep our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in their respective schools until this coming August. So in January, we will open Trist probably to the alternative school, and we intend to go out then in January with the solicitation of bids for the reopening of Goche and Raleigh. Now, we have 2 sets of architects currently working on those specifications. We feel that it's imperative to open a school in the eastern portion of the parish. We were not able to get St. Bernard High, as we said before, up and running that quickly, but we feel that we can get Goche open and operational by August. So the bids will go out for Goche, which is, we will put elementary students in that building in August, and the bids are going out for Raleigh, where we intend to move the alternative school for the foreseeable future to Raleigh. In March, we're going to follow that with the solicitation of bids for a new transportation and maintenance site. Our transportation and warehouse were situated at the old Araby Elementary site by the old Araby Park School. And that was completely underwater with extreme damage. We're not able to rebuild in that particular area. So what we intend to do is to open it as a new facility on the old Bournemouth site, which we do not currently use at all except for storage. So we intend to move all of our maintenance and transportation facilities to the old Bournemouth school site, which will be central in the parish, which will be more efficient from us from an operational standpoint. Then this coming August, we will, and if I'm going to drop down a minute, this coming August then we should have 5 schools open. Andrew Jackson, Chalmette High School, Goche, Raleigh, and Trist. So we will expand from 2 sites to 5 sites. And we will have the transportation and maintenance facility under construction. And what we also intend to do, we have additional school sites that we will bring back thereafter as the repopulation of the parish occurs. And that's the Nova site, which is the old St. Claude Heights. We will rebuild there. We've got Chalmette Middle School. We have Smith. We've got Sebastian Roy. We've got PGT Beauregard. All of these schools will eventually come back into operation. And as we view the repopulation patterns of the community, we'll decide the order in which we intend to renovate those schools. Now, the Lacoste site, what we decided to do with Lacoste, the Lacoste site, and if you see here, solicit bids for the preschool site. I want you to kind of flip to the next slide. Let me talk about it simultaneously. When we talked about new ideas, new facilities, new initiatives, we wanted to see how we could make best use of the available resources. We had 3 high schools prior to Hurricane Katrina. The population within the next few years is not going to be able to support 3 high schools, and our financial resources will not either. So what we're doing is to centralize our high school into one facility at the Chalmette High School campus and expand over across the street into the Lacoste campus. And we feel that it can hold about 2,200 students, which is the number that we had prior to the storm in all 3 schools. So we'll have a facility that can accommodate the number of students that we need to. It'll be centrally located. We'll eliminate the duplication of efforts and expenditures. And at that particular site, we've got the football stadium, the baseball stadium. We have just entered into an agreement with our parish government who will lease us the Rebel Park, which we'll be able to use as a softball and soccer field. So we'll have the softball field, the soccer field. On the campus of Chalmette High, we have the large gymnasium, and we have a practice gym there, an auxiliary gym. At the Lacoste site, there's a second auxiliary gym. We have the technology center, we have the TV studio there, 2 presentation areas, the swimming pool will come back, the skills training center, the track. We'll have an additional practice field, the ROTC building, and we'll have room to construct a community learning center, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we can offer advanced placement, gifted programs, vocational skills training centers for all of our students. So what we're trying to do is to construct a school there, a comprehensive high school, which will have everything for every student. Any sport you wish to play will be available there, and the facilities will accommodate it. Any academic program, advanced placement program, gifted programs, technology programs, all centralized at that particular site. We intend to do the same thing with the preschool centers at the Davies facility, and Davies is a school that is slated for demolition. We intend to construct a preschool center there and possibly smaller ones at the 2 elementaries that will have an operation. But it'll be a specific building that will accommodate our young children. The playground furniture and the facilities will be focused on the younger children. The security and safety issues will be easier to facilitate. We'll centralize the location, larger classrooms. In every classroom there will be bathroom facilities and water fountains for the children. And we'll be able to consolidate those programs for a cost savings, and we'll have the same age children together. The third part of the rebuilding plan that I wanted to talk about is our partnership with Nunez Community College. And in that partnership, we've had a wonderful partnership over the past few years, and we're looking to expanding that in the post-Katrina area. Our adult education program is housed here, along with their one-stop shop. We have dual enrollment with credit testing for our students, advanced placement and concurrent enrollment. And we've got cooperative programs, so we had them in the welding and the machine tool. What we've been able to put back is the new course that they've been offering, the industrial process technology. And we have that available with our seniors now who are taking that particular course along with their high school courses. We've got culinary arts, computer technology. So the ultimate goal is that our high school graduates will receive dual enrollment credit. It will give them a start on college, which will be a financial benefit to their parents, and it will get them their basic courses already taken before they go off to a 4-year institution. And for those who are not necessarily college-bound, then they'll be able to acquire some industry-based certification more in the vocational areas. And lastly, our commitment to the community. We have always run summer programs. We're continuing to do so. We did that with the 21st Century Grant last summer. We're hoping to be able to do it this summer, or at the very least reinstitute our Summer Discovery Festival for our students. We're hoping to reopen the pool for Red Cross lessons and aerobics. That should be coming soon. And on that Lacoste campus, which is going to be a big part of what we're looking to build, is a community learning center where we're going to take down a wing at Lacoste, which has been badly damaged by the storm. And if we can secure the necessary funding, we're going to build a community learning center which will include an informational technology access labs. There'll be meeting rooms that the community can use, different clubs, organizations, a career center, and then there will be areas for music, dance, drama, and community theater groups. So we intend to put in there the correct flooring for dance classes, the state-of-the-art technology for the visual arts, for the graphic arts, so that any child who is interested in the cultural arts, be they drama, music, or visual arts, we will have the facilities and the programs to accommodate those children. We will house the community band and the chorus, and as part of our commitment, we intend every year on August 29th to host an annual Day of Reflection breakfast. And we did host the first one this year, and I think that if any of you attended that, it was a huge success, and we intend to do that each and every year. There's one thing that we have that's on the drawing board, the old MoMA Center, and this is something that we're hoping to secure funding for. And some of our people in our television studio program, and I know we have Dave Dessens and Jack Jackson here with us tonight who helped to film some of these series, and Barry Lemoyne is also in that department. And we're hoping, if we can get the funding, is to open the MoMA Center as a 3-phase Katrina Museum for our community. The first phase is they're beginning to record the verbal, I guess, stories of what people have gone through. So we're going to get that orally, and we're going to get that in writing. And then in phase 2, once we can put that together, we will have visitors being able to come in to access these videos and narratives, to view the photos and maps of Katrina's pathway of destruction. And then hopefully, as something that will help fund this, we're trying to secure funding for an interactive science exhibition, mainly focusing on the storm surge, coastal erosion, those types of things. So this is an idea that we've got that will come hopefully sometime in the future. It's not slated, obviously, within the next year or so, but it is a project that we're looking for grants and funding for. So really, this is basically what we have is our rebuilding plan over the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 to 5 years, realizing that it will be continually changing as our community repopulates and we take a look at what our housing patterns are and what the community really needs. So just thank you very much for listening to our reflections from the past year and what our plans are, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
That was perfect timing. Thank you very much. All right, and I'd like to thank everybody for coming and invite you to the lecture on December 4th. Thanks a lot.